Hi beautiful souls, it's Tan here today with another astrology compatibility video, and this video is actually a requested video by one of you guys, viewers out there, who wanted to know the difference between a Synastry chart and a composite chart, which we use both of them in order to kind of evaluate the compatibility between two people. So when we talk about the composite chart, this will apply to both the composite and the Davidson relationship chart. Okay, so first of all, what is a Synastry chart? So a Synastry chart is when you take the chart of a natal chart of one person and another person and you literally just overlay them. So this is one person's natal chart, this is another person's natal chart, and you literally just overlay them on top of each other like that. And you can see through this overlay how the two people are going to interact with each other. So the Synastry chart shows the interaction, the actual manifestation of the interaction between the two people. Do they get along on a daily basis? You know, if one person talks to another person, does that person feel annoyed? And it can usually show how the two people feel about each other. And this can be seen, you know, in terms of where one person's planets fall in another person's houses. That's most likely going to show how they feel about each other. So the Synastry chart is the first step to determining if two people are going to like each other, or they're gonna feel like the other person's a challenge, or they're not really gonna even take notice of each other at all. And usually when we look at the synastry between the two people, when we have contacts, so when there are aspects between one person's outer planets and the other person's inner planets, this is very interesting. By outer planets, we talk about Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And all the other planets are inner planets. So when we have one person's outer planets contacting it with making an aspect to another person's inner planets, it is usually the inner planet that is feeling the effect of the outer planet person's impact on them. Okay? So let's say that, you know, person A has their sun in, let's say, Aquarius. And person B has, let's say, their Uranus in Aquarius. So when you do the synastry, you may have a sun conjunct Uranus. Person A's sun may conjunct person B's Uranus. So this means that person B is going to be the one who is unconsciously encouraging person A's self-expression and allowing them freedom of self-expression. So it's person A's sun. Person A is the one who is going to be feeling this, that the person B's outer planet is affecting them more. The person who has the outer planet is more of unconsciously having an impact on the person who has the inner planet. So I hope that kind of made sense. Now if it is two people's inner planets meeting up in the synastry, then both of them are going to be feeling the aspects that is taking place very much strongly. Okay? So that's how synastry works. Now when we talk about the composite chart is when you take one person's natal chart, another person's natal chart, and you somehow mix them together to create one chart. And this is a chart of the relationship. It's a relationship chart. The composite is, you know, created by looking at the midpoint between two people's planets in their individual natal charts and combining that. The Davidson is more of a location chart, so it depends. It combines the two people's locations to make another chart. But most of the time you will see a theme that occurs between, you know, the composite and the Davidson chart. And whatever that you see that is in the composite and it appears again in the Davidson chart, that's going to be an important and significant part of the relationship. So what does it actually mean to have a relationship chart? What I've discovered is that the composite chart is almost like, you know, how every relationship has a certain dynamic to it that all other relationships don't have. You know, some relationships might be more based on friendship and more based on adventure. You know, some relationships might be based on more domestic qualities, might be based on building a home. Some relationships might be, you know, based on physical connection, might be based on sex. That's the kind of thing that we can see in a composite chart is, you know, what is the dynamic, what is the basis, what is the quality or the essence of the relationship that you are in. I hope that kind of made sense so far. So, you know, relationships happen in stages. I think we all know this. You know, the first stage is, of course, the romance stage of a relationship, and the next stage is kind of you are discovering and you have to accept another person's flaws, because once the romance stage is over, now your flaws start to come out. The next stage is kind of the working together, compromising stage, and then so on, so on. So the composite chart can really show how the two people are going to deal with each of these stages in a relationship, and how difficult it is going to be for the two of them to cope with each step, each stage of a long-term relationship. You know, if we've got a lot of challenging or hard aspects in the composite chart, it can show that it is much harder for the two people to work together to make each stage of the relationship work for them. If they have kind of easier or soft aspects in the composite chart, it can show that these two people are going to be able to work better with each other to cope with and overcome each stage of a long-term relationship. And of course, you know, depending on the planets and what aspects they're making, it's kind of going to show what aspect of a relationship is most difficult for this couple to work together with. You know, like if we have some hard Venus-Pluto aspects in the composite, it's going to show that it is harder for this couple to work on their shared resources. And it's harder for the two people to work on their combining their love natures together. You know, if we have like a hard Sun-Uranus aspect, then it can mean that it is harder for these two people to come to terms with, you know, their independence and freedom and combining their worldviews in a harmonious way. So it really depends. But usually what's going to happen is whatever that's appearing in the composite chart or the Davidson chart, it is something that you can trace back to the synastry and the individual natal charts to see why it's happening in the composite chart, you know. So if we have like a hard Venus-Pluto aspect in the composite chart, usually you'll find that either, you know, in the synastry there is a hard Venus-Pluto aspect, or maybe in the natal charts of the two individuals they have hard Venus-Pluto aspects in themselves. Or it could be that, you know, one person's got like a Venus in, you know, Scorpio in the 8th house, something like that, that's causing this kind of dynamic in the relationship in the composite chart. So it's very rare to not be able to trace certain composite aspects back to the natal charts because, well, the composite chart is a relationship based on those two people together. So when it really comes down to it, you know, like when I do like a reading for a client who's interested in compatibility and synastry and things like that, it always comes down to the composite chart. Yes, we can see what's going on in the synastry, but at the end of the day, it's really the composite chart that determines whether the relationship is going to make it or not. But at the same time, you know, you have to take into consideration who the two people involved in the relationship are by looking at their natal charts and seeing if, you know, they can handle whatever's going on in the composite chart. Are they going to be able to handle it well? Are they going to take whatever's in the composite chart to the extreme or not? You have to look back at the individuals involved in the relationship again. So there's just a lot to consider. But yes, the composite chart, I found that a lot of challenging aspects in the composite chart eventually, you know, leads to a relationship that isn't necessarily going to last because of the amount of stress that the two people in the relationship and the amount of can feel, and the amount of sometimes even abuse or toxicity that they inflict on each other, that they prefer not to stay in such relationships. But of course, you know, a really beautiful, you know, there are such things as really beautiful composite charts as well, and you know, that can lead the two people to make it in the long term too. So yeah, but we also have to keep in mind that also we don't, as human beings, we're not really going to choose to be in relationships where everything is easy, because then we're not going to be able to grow from it. So it's always, you know, important to take into consideration that both in the synastry and in the composite, most of the time you'll find like 60% harmonious relationships, 40% harmonious aspects, and like 40% challenging aspects, things like that, so that we can learn to improve ourselves based on those challenging aspects that we have to deal with when we are with another person. But of course, if you're like in a relationship where like 90% of the stuff there is just all challenging, well, you've got to consider why you're in that relationship in the first place, and if you can take a lesson and learn from that relationship, then is there any reason for you to still be in it? Or maybe you should leave the relationship, you know, things like that. So guys, I hope that answers some questions that you might have between the difference between the synastry and the composite chart. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer it. And yeah, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button below if you haven't. If you already subscribed, then thank you very much for coming along on these astrology growth journeys, learning, growing together, and having better relationships with the people around us. I'll see you soon, guys. Bye.